Hello, I'm Robinson Valenzuela, your instructor for Art 1630. We're going to create our first composition in After Effects. You can close the welcome window after you open After Effects and create a new project. In After Effects, you create video content inside of a composition. The composition is like your canvas in painting or Photoshop, where you see everything put together with effects and playing in real time. So click New to create one on New Composition. Immediately you'll be asked about the size of your composition. And we have quite a few presets here. You might think of this as your movie size, but if we compare it to things you're already familiar with, let's say you want a TV for your room, what did you want it to buy? A tube TV? Nah. Maybe a 4K TV? 8K TV? Yeah, 8K transparent TV. Well, these are the same presets you are about to pick. It refers to the width and height of your movie in pixels. As you know, there's also pixel density nowadays, like in your phone, to make the image clearer. So these resolutions here we're going to cover. All tube TVs had a resolution commonly referred as NTSC, or National Television Standard Committee. So it's a resolution all broadcasters agreed upon, so they would all project at the same size. It was 720 by 480. Back then it was actually in lines, shot by a cathode, but things are different now with LCD TVs. Our very first high-definition TV to come out were 1280 by 720 pixels, or also a little bit bigger, 1440 by 1080. Then the most common high-definition standard today is 1920 by 1080. This is the resolution we will use in this class. In fact, most videos you see online nowadays are this resolution. It is true you can watch 4K and even 8K resolution videos, but the amount of computer power that it takes to create a movie this size slows down your system quite a bit, and it also slows down your upload time after you render a movie. So when you're trying to upload to Canvas, it's really slow. So for our purposes, we will stick to 1920 by 1080. 4K resolution is just double this size, and 8K just double 4K. Next on our presets we have frames per second. The frames per second is how many pictures per second the camera took to simulate movement. But we can also pick it on the composition itself, how many images per second we want to display on the final video. You may be familiar with the term if you play first-person shooter games, where there are some rates as high as 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. When film was first invented, the frame rate could vary depending on who was cranking the camera or the projector being used at the movie theater. But when sound was added to film, the 24 frames per second was agreed upon to have a consistent sound. With the introduction of over-the-waves video transmissions, the rates of 60 and 30 frames per second were adopted. These rates were also called hertz per second. But because of hertz and an artifact called dot crawling, it was discovered that lowering the frames per second 0.1% would take care of dot crawling. This is how 59.95 frames per second and 29.97 frames per second rates were introduced. For our purposes, we will stick to 24 or 30 frames per second. Then you have the composition length, and is represented by frames, the first set of zeros. The second set of zeros is seconds, and the third set of zeros is minutes and then hours. And then you can pick the background with this color swatch on the bottom. You have to keep in mind that this background will not render. If you want it to render a specific color, you will have to use a layer or solid and put it under your composition.